going on, gang? How we doing today? All right. Mic check, mic check. I get a one in chat if y'all can hear me. Alas, looks like I am having some technical difficulties here. All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Nelly. Appreciate it, man. Thank you, thank you. All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We're gonna have a little bit of fun today. Cover some crypto news. I'm gonna talk a little bit about some guitar stuff for anyone who's interested in some of the musical aspects of things, and then we'll get down to it. So, without a doubt, like, share, and subscribe. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Let's have a little bit of fun, shall we? So let me present out my screen and we'll get rocking. All right, so as we are working our way through the calendar year and the run up to the halving, we are about 52 days. Now, again, depending on which calculators you're looking at, you may get some different results on these. I've seen as early as the 17th. I've seen a halving date as laid out as the 25th. This is all based on the rate of progression through the blockchain and how quickly things are posting before we ultimately hit the magic number on the corresponding block. So again, current count, ballpark, let's give it a 1 week sort of spread on this one. We're looking out to potentially, let's say, starting the 17th out to the 25th currently. So we've got a few other interesting topics today. We're going to talk a little bit about some SEC stuff, some general crypto stuff. As a heads up, I am doing another stream in about 4 hours with some special guests. I'll be joined later today by the one and only Crypto Boogie and very special guest, Agent J from the DGen Roundtable. Make sure you follow those guys on different socials. Give them a like on the corresponding videos. And if you haven't hopped into the DGen Roundtable Telegram, I certainly encourage everyone to do that. So, all right, that gives us the Bitcoin halving clock progression. Let's see what else we got going on over here. So recently, crypto exchange Kraken has filed a motion to dismiss the SEC lawsuit. So the SEC had previously sued Kraken last year, and Kraken ultimately settled to the tune of about 30 mil on that one. It should not, as I recall, it wasn't any, no admission of wrongdoing. It was just pay the fine and get to move on. So the Kraken crew has basically said, hey, we're going to file a motion to dismiss. The original allegations last year were that it was an unregistered exchange, broker, and clearinghouse. And I think when they got tagged last year for 30 mil, it was related to staking, which is ultimately why Kraken canned all their staking in the US market. So that forced us to basically start using alternative mechanisms like DeFi, if anyone was using Kraken for the convenience sake of it, to bridge everything over or move everything over to corresponding native wallets and stake on native chains. So in this particular case, the company has filed a motion to dismiss in California, telling the SEC to kick rocks. And I do believe personally, part of this has to do with the fact that Kraken had settled with the SEC to the tune of 30 million last year, versus if they had pushed back on that initially, then maybe they wouldn't find themselves on these grounds today, or maybe they would. We know the SEC with Gary Gensler at the helm has made it seemingly a very unique and strange mission to go after a number of different entities for reasons they themselves cannot fully define on within the context of the SEC. So there's no fraud allegation, no consumer harm allegation. The sole claim is that Kraken has somehow operated in plain sight for almost a decade as an unregistered securities exchange, broker-dealer, and clearing agency in violation of the Exchange Act. So basically, from my interpretation, I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. The SEC is just trying to make examples of people at this point in time. They're just getting dunked on left and right. And it'll be interesting to see how this one shapes up. I also do think the Kraken team is likely emboldened by the fact that Coinbase had told the SEC to kick rocks. And if you want to hop over to the Kraken blog, you can actually see their expanded explanation as far as their side of the story against the SEC, why they want to have the case dismissed. And a lot of this has to do with, again, the SEC effectively making up certain rules out of thin air, as Kraken did not fail the Howey test. There's no contract between buyers and And it's a real interesting quick read. It's maybe 1-2 pages tops. And they are calling out the potential abuse of power by the SEC, as this should really be a congressional decision, not unilaterally up to the SEC on that one. So I'll throw that link in chat for anyone who wants to read through that. And shout out to some of the viewers rolling through. Nelly, good to see you, man. Hopefully, if you're making out to Pulse Chain Tour, great. If not, I'll probably see you later this summer. Moonpill, good to see you, man. Hopefully I get a chance to see you later this summer as well. Thumbnails are fire. That is Midjourney, one of those AI image generation tools. I've been messing around with them for about a year, and we'll get to some of the advancements that they have shown. In fact, all of my thumbnails are generated using Midjourney in some way, shape, or form. In that one, for today's thumbnail, I posted an angry Twinkie with a guitar fighting a Terminator, and that's the thing it spit out. So it's pretty wild sometimes some of the art it comes up with. All right. And we got the Ascending Man himself rolling through. Nate, good to see you. Always good to see folks from the DGen Roundtable passing through. All right. Back to some of the more interesting other things going on in the crypto space over the last week or so. So this one kind of jumped out at me as I was skimming through some different news articles, and that's the Bitcoin ETF price flow correlation is declining according to JP Morgan. It reached a peak in January, which doesn't surprise me given everyone was patiently awaiting the ETF launch, but the correlation has reduced and slowed down over time. So here they break into what their analysis is at a very high level. Anything over 0.7 is considered highly correlated, and then going below that would be moderately correlated. We know that we had roughly 2.4 billion of funds being dumped into their ETF. I believe the current largest ETF is BlackRock. I'd have to pull up the stats on who has the most, followed right after, I want to say, by Fidelity. And I do believe BlackRock has a healthy lead in the overall total number of Bitcoin held within the context of the ETF. So in this particular case, we know over the last week, it's kind of been somewhat stable. And again, tune in a few hours when we got, let's say, a follow-up somewhat to the current stream here, where I'll have some of the chart wizards take a look at some corresponding charts. I've suspected that we've been kind of holding around this mark as potential, let's say, Bitcoin buyers and ETF customers are effectively, my suspicion here, and I don't have any hard proof on this, it's just a hunch based on the stability of the price, overall news articles, and just some of the commentary by some of these large ETFs and large investment brokers who have just billions of dollars of assets under management, that what we're seeing is moves from one Bitcoin investment platform to another, aka a lot of grayscale conversions. And certainly there will be some level of institutional money and normie money flowing in as they say, hey, you're my financial advisor. I want to know this Bitcoin thing. The other one that was jumping out at me this week, and this one, they just got laced and stitched up on Twitter, is the ECB, European Central Bank, saying, Bitcoin is like a major tool of fraud and the like, but just absolutely neglecting over the fact that if you actually go back and look at like 20 years ago, I believe the $500 or 500 euro note is no longer in existence because 10, 15, 20 years ago, let's say nefarious entities liked to have the 500 pound or 500 euro bill effectively because it was a higher encapsulation or unit of value, making it easier to move certain laundered funds or off the books funds transfers. So I believe actually the 500 euro note is no longer in existence. Somebody can fact check me on that one, but certainly used by arms dealers, drug dealers, and the like for a while because it was easier to move significant quantities of money effectively without using the US dollar. And I don't believe in general we had, for like commonly available units of denomination, we had any bills larger than 100. And my buddy Nate telling the people what's up. Yeah, please like, share, and subscribe. I'm just here to share some alternative or different looks at the crypto space that perhaps aren't getting covered elsewhere. Certainly, a lot of us are looking at technical analysis, on-chain analysis, fundamental analysis. I know we got a really strong Pulse and Hex community. Obviously, everyone's looking at Bitcoin and Ethereum and the like. My basic premise is if we got 50 people looking in that direction, am I going to make a significant difference as the 51st? I'm more than happy to share some perspectives, or maybe I can look in a slightly different direction and maybe highlight some things that other people might not be eyeballing. Anyway, coming back around to the ECB here, the claims against the ECB are leveling against Bitcoin really don't make sense. And okay, don't recommend Bitcoin because it's going to crash. Well, okay, it dumps for sure, but look at the chart over time. It just goes up and to the right. It's one of the most amazing charts of all time. In fact, it's the best performing asset of all time. So ECB team is saying, hey, the approval in ETF doesn't change the fact that Bitcoin is not a suitable means of payment or as an investment. I'll give them a little leeway on the payment side of things in the sense that it is not fast to transact in Bitcoin a lot of time. You are awaiting a certain level of reconciliation. As an investment, I am going to largely disagree with that. I am full disclosure. I do hold some Bitcoin. For some who have followed us in myself in some of the Telegram chats or caught some of the other streams, I've effectively sold off 80% of my Bitcoin at this point in the market evolution for this bull run, as I am looking to take some multiples I have made on my Bitcoin, move it into some selective altcoins in the efforts to multiply my gains. You know, if I made a double on Bitcoin, I roll it into something like Ethereum that should do it a 3 to 5x. Now all of a sudden I'm up to, you know, let's say 6 to 10x on my initial capital on that investment path. If I throw some of that into an altcoin that does a 10x or better, now I'm talking 20x on that portion of my position. If I hit something that's, you know, a moonshot and 100x, 1000x, well, we're balling, baby. All right, back to the ECB and their colossal screw up and trying to make this argument. So I disagree with them on the investment side of things. I think it's actually a totally fine investment, arguably, I won't say unquestionably, not financial advice, not investment advice. Past performance does not guarantee any sort of future performance, so on and so forth. It's certainly, Bitcoin seems to be encapsulating essentially all the economic energy being thrown at it. So we often talk about ratio trading or looking at certain things in relationship to each other. We don't think about this like, hey, this is my smartphone, right? Maybe it's like $400 new or 600 new or whatever. We don't think of that as a ratio. You get one of these objects in exchange for all this fiat currency. So all we're really doing is we start looking at different types of properties, liabilities, other assets and the like. We're changing the denomination on that in the sense that we're not calculating it in a fiat dollar. We're calculating it in Bitcoin or some other crypto. And so as you start thinking about some of those different things, certain things start to come into existence. So for example, I'm in the state of New Hampshire. We have the ability through selective mechanisms to actually buy and sell and transact for real estate in Bitcoin. So if you wanted to buy a house in Bitcoin, you could conceivably do that. And there are real estate firms up here that will assist you with that. Pretty neat. Also, too, for anyone who's looking for places to potentially move to, we are a constitutional carry state. There is no state income tax on wages. The interest and dividends taxes for this year is 3% and then goes to a nice friggin' 0 at the end of 2024. So effectively, you know, your income taxes across a variety of mechanisms will plummet to 0. As long as you don't mind the New England weather, you know, yeah, it's a great time up here in New Hampshire. Anyway, coming back around to the ECB. So they're talking about the boom bust cycle of Bitcoin, but no one talks about things like the overall debt cycle in the macro economy. So I know one of my instructors from the crypto mindset team, Dollar Cost Crypto, Miguel, and the other instructor there and co-owner of that course in Charlie, Cultivate Crypto. Go give them a like, share, subscribe, and follow as well. One of the things they always talk about is the crypto space is substantially faster than the regular normie asset space. 1 month in Bitcoin is like a year in traditional markets. And okay, that sounds crazy at first, but then you think about it, well, there's no off switch, right? Like the stock exchanges. So, and because it's 24/7 uptime, it's literally 3 times the potential amount of time to move in over the same course of 1 day. Then you start adding in weekends and holidays, and okay, yeah, it actually really does make sense how potentially 1 month in the crypto space is like a traditional stocks and equities market on that front. Anyway, There's some additional chatter here from the ECB about the rally in 23, prospect of interest rate policy. It looks like outside of this, rates are going to stay where they're at currently since inflation came in a little hot. And as far as what's initiating the Bitcoin rally, people are looking for a hedge against this inflation. They always cook the books. They change how that stuff is calculated over time. Realistically, I think if you look at certain assets versus Bitcoin, you can see, somebody bought one pizza for like 50 Bitcoin. Now think about, you could buy pizza stores and like for 1 Bitcoin these days. Anyway, ECB, totally bogus. I think it's a crock of shit on their commentary. They obviously want you in the euro, and the purchasing power of the euro relative to Bitcoin, I believe, again, somebody can fact check me on this, has declined about 99.5% since the inception of Bitcoin coinciding with the euro. All right, this is just a quick call out to what we were mentioning last or a few minutes ago on the SEC side of things. This was their $30 million settlement for violating securities laws. Again, they had to halt staking services and like. I already touched upon that. I'm just going to skip over this one and keep it moving. More on the ECB saying fair value of Bitcoin is still zero. I like to check a few different news sources and just to see, okay, where they're aligning, what's getting filtered, what's the, what are some of the talking heads saying either in normie space or in crypto space. The fair value of Bitcoin is still zero. I don't understand how anyone can logically and rationally come to that conclusion when we're seeing billions of dollars of net inflows as a store of value, as let's say, an asset of which there's ultimately a finite quantity, but can be divided to a great level of precision. It just doesn't make sense to me. As far as the ability to transact that as a form of payment, I don't see Bitcoin. And we'll see what the evolution of Bitcoin holds ultimately with future enhancements. And I don't see it necessarily becoming a super fast medium of payment under current conditions. I mean, I think some people have seen what have happened if you try to transact in Bitcoin with some of the volume driven by ordinals and networks jamming up. And we've certainly seen similar issues on Ethereum and other networks. If Solana could stay up, it seems like the joke is back in motion. Then, maybe there's something to be said there. I know AVAX had an outage the other day. Clearly, they wanted some of those Solana gains. Bitcoin itself, in my experience, having transacted in it and moved some around, it is not that fast. Where I see it continuing to hold value as a use case is ultimately store of value. And I'll say certain debts I think can be settled in Bitcoin. So I work for a large scale corporation in the daytime. We're doing hundreds of millions or billions of dollars of business annually. I'm not going to sit there and argue with Moonpilled over like a $5 settlement not being settled in real time. It's basically through our accounting systems and ledgers. I should know what my accounts payable, accounts receivable, what my liabilities and assets are on the books in relatively any point in time. So long as there's a certain margin of error baked into that and things are generally posting and flowing appropriately, there can still be a time lag on it and it's totally fine. So, I think about things like you buy stuff on credit, right? Or you swipe your debit card somewhere or your credit card somewhere. That transaction doesn't always instantaneously post. There's effectively an IOU written as a liability that has to get synced up a little down the line. Same thing I think is going to happen with Bitcoin, especially as we start seeing larger total dollars being posted directly into Bitcoin or in some of these ETFs. All right, I got a few other pieces of news and then we'll talk a little bit about some guitar stuff and then we'll get over to the main topic of the day. So in this case, I think everyone here remembers, CZ took one for the team in the grand scheme of things. CZ, the hero, I guess we ultimately needed to continue to advance the crypto space. We'll see how history treats him. I think history will ultimately look favorably upon CZ. But as far as a corporate entity, Binance is accepting a plea deal or having a plea deal approved where it says it accepts responsibility. This has to do with certain KYC, money laundering laws and in this case, we know CZ had to step down against that. And I believe he's still awaiting sentencing. I think that's coming up in the next few weeks on that. So in this particular case, they didn't have anti-money laundering program in place, stringent KYC requirements. They didn't file suspicious activity reports. And then allegedly illicit actors were able to use Binance to conduct transactions for mixing services and transferring their funds. So Do I think Binance necessarily scrutinized everything? No. Do we want to deliberate the extent to which perhaps they were looking the other way? Well, it seems like the US government has weighed in on this one. So in this particular case, Binance is going to have some level of monitoring applied to it over the next several years. The court has been asked to accept the plea deal and the like. And here we go. CZ awaiting his sentencing hearing set for April 30th. So potentially we get the halving in 1 week, and then we get CZ sentencing the week after, or in relatively close proximity on that front. He secured his release with a $175 million bond. He is potentially facing a prison term up to 18 months. Prosecutors are arguing for 10 years. To me, this is really trying to make an example of CZ on this one. So we'll see what comes out of it. I'm sure CZ did the math at some point in time and said, hey, this is the risk I run. This is good for crypto. I'm going to make, millions to billions of dollars. Let's swing for the fences. All right. Last interesting one. I know we're heating stuff up in here in the US as we're in an election year and stuff is getting spicy on multiple fronts. Donald Trump's stance on Bitcoin is changing and many people are embracing it. So I wonder how much of this is from Vivek Ramaswamy, who has basically ran as a challenger for the Republican ticket, ultimately lost, but really smart, well-spoken individual, and seems to have gained a certain level of favor with Trump. I'm sure he's talking to Trump about that. We know Trump originally was very skeptical, called Bitcoin a scam. Later on, we had these Trump NFTs. We've had multiple iterations of Trump NFTs. And he has indicated that many people are embracing Bitcoin and we'll have to find a way to work with it. I do appreciate that earlier this year, Trump had said he would never allow a central bank digital currency, as it would give the government absolute control over our money. For those not familiar with prior CBDC test runs elsewhere in the world, I encourage you to look at the Beijing Olympics. Some of those funds had time locks on them. You had to spend them in, I want to say it was 2 weeks, or effectively your money evaporated. So yeah, I'm very much anti-CBDC. I can understand the notion of wanting to have a currency for a country. I think BTC is potentially a global currency, or one of many potential global currencies. And my personal opinion is, for now, barring certain technological changes, the toothpaste is out of the tube, the genie is out of the bottle. There ain't no going back. Anyway, it's going to be an interesting year as we kind of cruise into this on the election year side of things. All right. So I'm going to shift gears slightly and let me hop back over to the main view. I want to talk a little bit about this piece of gear. I'm hoping that it kind of came through okay on the intro. We'll have to check on the playback later. So this is my, let's say, piece of gear for the next few weeks, my number one. I've been working with this particular guitar for several weeks and behind the scenes. I've had it for almost 20 years at this point in time. It's kind of interesting little peculiarity made by Yamaha. This is actually what they call an RGX A2, terrible naming system that they had there. But Yamaha has made killer stuff in so many different industries for many, many years. You think like Yamaha motorcycles, ATVs, boat engines, drums, guitars, pianos, generators, you name it. They kind of make, it may not be absolute best in class and everything, but they make everything really friggin' well. And so my argument here is Yamaha is a company that actually understands the science of vibration extremely well on a multitude of fronts. So with that, they had the opportunity to cross-share a lot of their tech in the grand scheme of things. I remember reading the drum team was trying to come up with a mount and they were struggling. The motorcycle team had an answer to it. And basically they took a motorcycle bracket and put it on the drum set and voila, magic, all of a sudden more sustain and resonance on the drum. So yeah, I'm going to argue that they know the science of vibration. Anyway, just to quickly nerd out on some of the more guitar stuff, you can see part of the reason I originally bought this was for a stage guitar in the grand scheme of things. You can see it's got like a LED in here. What that does is it reflects the pickup I am on for the different tones, and I'll give you a sound sample here in a second. So you can see it changes colors based on that. Pretty neat, right? It's kind of like an iPhone-ish style guitar. Some other really cool technological elements to this. So when they designed this guitar, they were really trying to come up with a way to have a lighter guitar, because some of these guitars, 10, 11 pounds. And okay, I know there are some gym rats in the audience here and they're like 10, 11 pounds. What is that? Stop being a little bitch. When it's sitting here compressing on a strap, like kind of on your shoulder and neck, night after night or gig after gig or hours at rehearsals, and it's only on one side, that shit kind of sucks over time. So they want to come up with a lighter guitar. And what they actually did is they sandwiched some lighter weight wood between two pieces of more hardwood. They've got some, I'll call them a sound tube or sound conduit running through the middle of the guitar that is attached to the bridge here. It's a proprietary electronic system as far as the pickups here. And all in all, this thing maybe weighs 5.5 pounds, maybe 5 3/4. It is super light, really resonant, and it's definitely a fun guitar to play. A few other interesting little elements surrounding this guitar is, aside from the LED pickup selector, let's say pickup indicator, which, side note, it's way more interesting to you out there than it is to me, because when I'm playing, I can't see the lights. So it looks cool from an audience perspective. It's actually kind of difficult at times for me to tell which pickup I am on, because most other guitars, it's a switch here. So I can see the position of the switch and tell what pickups I'm actually using. In this particular case, it's got the lights, which are generally, again, not really facing me. The other little complaint I have about this is these knobs are semi-recessed. So it looks sleek, but from a player's perspective, I kind of got to grip into the well a little bit to turn it. Anyway, let's see here. If you're a guitar player, these are not actually soap bar pickups. These are proprietary humbuckers designed by Yamaha. It's their own in-house design. It is a rosewood fretboard, medium thick neck. Interestingly enough, it's a very unusual fretboard radius. And so what is a fretboard radius? If you actually look down the guitar, this actually has a slight curve to it. All guitars do. So you might see vintage guitars are 7.25 inch. More modern guitars will be 18-inch radius. So if you think about taking a piece of string, the length of that string would create the radius as you kind of arc it through space. So the longer that is, the flatter the fretboard effectively. So this is a 13.75 inch radius, which is very unusual. It's the only guitar I've ever come across where it has that kind of, it's flatter than a Gibson, but not as flat as, say, a modern Jackson or Ibanez guitar. So it's a pretty comfortable neck, pretty fun to play on. And again, this one's about a 2005. Oh, last really cool innovation they did, and I wish more guitar companies would do, is you can see these tuning pegs. They're actually round knobs. If you tune into some forthcoming streams, you'll see some other guitars and the like over time. A lot of other guitars, what they have is a flat peg out here that you kind of grab and twist. So it's easier to twist on, let's say, those peg-driven guitars. The problem is if you're playing in a band space or on stage, you got typically mic stands, amps, you might be kind of crowded on the corner of a stage. It's real easy to bump those friggin' pegs on things and knock your tuning out. Because these things are so round, it's much harder to bump and catch. So all in all, I'd say interesting player's guitar, really well done. Oh, yeah. Final last feature too, just based on how I play. There's no protruding screws down here. So if you play a vintage Fender or let's say older style Fenders, or even a Gibson with a Tune-O-Matic style bridge, there's typically little things that protrude that can get a little irritating over time. This is basically flush and flat and everything's recessed. Really cool guitar. You can find them on Reverb for $500 these days. So let me give you a quick sound demo on this thing. So you can hear some of the different electronics. So yeah, anyway, that's from another lifetime. All right, cool. Let's get back to some crypto stuff. All right, let me hop back over and start sharing out my screen again, and we'll talk a little more about some crypto and some AI stuff. All righty. So I know AI has been in the news a ton over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, there was the Sora video generator release. If you haven't seen that thing, go check it out. It's SORA, just like to punch in Sora video generator. It's basically I don't know. Don't trust anything you see on the internet anymore, kids. Like not in writing, not in video. You see it on the TV, doesn't matter. Holy shit, that stuff is crazy. Let me see if I can get to it. Let's do. Yeah, here we go. This stuff is crazy. This woman is not real. There's nothing here that's real. All synthetically AI generated. Unbelievable, right? So it'll be interesting to see what happens for movies and things like that. But this is pretty wild. You know, out through woolly mammoths. Some dude in, looks like the Salt Flats. None of this is real. So it'll be cool for movies and stuff like that. And I think like amateur content creators and the like. I think there's some questions about legislation that potentially needs to be put into place for certain things, anything from like revenge porn to other real sketchy stuff. As far as the ability to create content, we're increasingly becoming only limited by our imagination in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, fascinating stuff. Anyway, coming back around to AI, NVIDIA cracking a $2 trillion valuation. So for comparison's sake, crypto as a whole is worth about 2 trillion right now. Pretty exciting stuff. Obviously, we've had a bit of a lift on the basis of Sora and NVIDIA over the last, let's say, couple of weeks and the like. So I have some questions about this, how NVIDIA is looking as a whole. I think other people know I'm a Cathie Wood fan overall in principle, but she took a big L with the ARC team by selling those NVIDIA shares a little early. Anyway, they had a killer earnings report. I know, was it Sam Altman from the OpenAI team was looking for like, what was it, $7 trillion investment in seeking AI specialized chips just to further bolster the industry. Anyway, so NVIDIA killed it, Sora kills it, and that brings a little more hype to some of the aspects of the AI space. So what I'm actually going to do here is, speaking of Cathie Wood, hop back over to the ARK Invest report for a second and just highlight a few other things in this space. So let me pull up that report here on a screen share. So in this particular case, look at how fast ChatGPT cranked up to 100 million users. Right? So you see the trend, Facebook way out here on the right to get to 100 million users. And let me blow this up a little bit. Let's say call it 4 3/4 years. ChatGPT, let me pull myself off screen so people can see the full image here. Basically, look at that. It's like almost a straight line comparatively, right? Nothing to everyone's using it and getting 100 million users. And if you look at earnings calls over on the right-hand side, you can see that the mentions of AI tripled. I can tell you for my daytime hustle, we have replaced a number of help desk areas with chat bots able to open and open tickets for you, update tickets for you, and respond to you. And it's getting better at researching and linking you to the appropriate self-help guides and like. And that's just in my own little slice of business. I can't imagine what the rest of the industries are starting to look like elsewhere. But you can see that the number of mentions tripled on earnings call. So from nothing to tripling the amount of mentions. And again, going from effectively overnight, 0 to 100 million unique users for that particular ChatGPT tool. So, all right, let's see here. Cruising right along in this report. So we're seeing improvements in productivity according to coding tasks. So without Copilot, and then improving the productivity by way of speed and quality according to different entries on GitHub and some different reports here. So how might it improve coding quality? And there's certainly going to be some overlap with aspects of crypto and the smart contract space. It's not picture perfect. And for my daytime job, due to legal regulatory concerns, you can't just fire off AI code and dump it and use it. It has to be effectively validated, tested, validated, verified, and we have to produce a proof of record effectively for what I do for work. Other industries are not going to necessarily have that same level of requirement or scrutiny, but the developers reported being 2.2 times more effective. So one person is worth like 1 1/5 other additional people now potentially utilizing some of these tools. And on the consultant side of things, you can see that their task quality and task speed improved anywhere from 25% on up through 43%, depending on the kind of underlying criteria. So it helps people go faster and it's making fewer mistakes. Interesting stuff in some of those industries. A few other highlights throughout this report I'll call out. In this particular case, they're training it using larger data sets and testing it across multiple domains. So the USA Biology Olympiad, which is a national high school test for biology. You can see there are grad school tests here out through advanced placement high school level tests in psychology, chemistry, and the like. And then it falls off tremendously. If you notice, just a massive dump as it starts getting into aspects of math and language and literature. So what is it doing well in at least some of the conclusions we can start to draw from this? To me, the most telling one was the bar exam and the fact that it's basically, in the case of Chat GPT solutions, scoring on the 90th percentile range for certain, let's say, national legal recognition type tests in assorted industries. So what's that going to hold for in the future for things like accounting? Anything that is logical, stable, predictable, and who knows, maybe even like AI judges, AI lawyers. Yeah, crazy stuff is happening. It's advancing very, very quickly. All right, so I know Moonpill was talking about some of the thumbnails I use, and I've mentioned in some of the chats and mentioned earlier today that the graphics I generally use for my thumbnails are at least in part generated by Midjourney. And it's the first one I've really started using, and I've just kind of stuck with it ever since. There are other ones, certainly out there. Look at what it went from 2016 to 2022. And then 2022, for anyone who tuned into the thumbnail before I loaded up today, you could see what it was generating on that. And you can see over way on the right-hand side, version 6. So not quite 2 years later, and just a tremendous advancement based on these same prompts. In related industry, the cost of authoring written content has dropped tremendously. So, some of the pay per word type scenarios, makes me kind of wonder if anyone is outsourcing stuff to Fiverr or getting copy written for them, how much of that is being written by a person versus how much of it is somebody just throwing a prompt into an AI generation tool, turning you around and say, hey, give me $5, $50, $500, whatever it may be on that front. Again, for anyone not familiar with this, I am referencing the ARC Big Ideas report on this stuff. Super interesting report, covers a variety of domains, medicine, AI, the list just kind of goes on and on, crypto, blockchain, digital wallets. I'm going to skip down to page 29 on this stuff. So other news in the sort of AI generation trend is the open source community is competing with private models. Okay, we know ChatGPT had the early lead. Obviously, they've got Sora. On the image generation, we've got stuff like assorted stable diffusion type editors and Midjourney on some of these things. And again, there are plenty of other tools out there. But you can see that the private solution versus some of the open source solutions, the gap between these two is trending towards an intersect. So right now, places or like teams like, really Google with Gemini. I know Gemini's been in the news all this week for basically being anti-white people, and basically it's clearly been programmed with some DEI, like hard programmed and fed on the data set. But you can see effectively private entities have still a solid lead on it, but look at the gap closing over time. It's inevitably going to intersect at some point in time as eventually the limits start to become less the ability to model things, and it's really the data set, eventually, personal opinion, that will make that difference over time. So the moat is shrinking. Last one, and then we'll move on to some related crypto tangents. This goes back to what I was just saying. The data set is starting to become the limiting factor here. So we're scouring the internet, scouring data sources. They're probably scouring your locations, scouring your search terms, images posted. Hell, they're probably scraping the audio coming off my mic right now. But as far as untapped data sources, quadrillion words spoken annually, 30 quadrillion words. The question I ask is, how are they going to follow those 30 quadrillion words? Well, if you have the Amazon or Google listening device that listens to your commands and talks back to you, if you know what I'm talking about, they're going to be using some of that. Speech to text tools and the like, they're able to capture some of the 80 trillion words spoken daily. If you remember stuff like applications like Dragon Naturally Speaking, synthetic data augmenting primary data, they don't really specify this. To me, that is derivative data, like if assorted, calculated, derived data. And then autonomous taxis, trucks, drones, and other robots, which are going to have these arrays of sensors, things like LiDAR, echolocation, GPS, and like velocity, acceleration, altitude, barometric pressure. List just kind of goes on and on. It's going to have more and more information to hoover up and punch it into some of their models, be it things like ChatGPT for conversational sake or image generation, Sora for video generation. Oh yeah, we are rapidly hurtling towards some kind of crazy combo of Ready Player One and The Matrix. So stay frosty out there, stay educated. Anyway, let me hop over to the chat and see what we got going on in the chat right now. All right, we got a few more other folks passing through. Centurion, what's up, my man? A wild boogie appears. I gotta find out what happens if I like look in the mirror and say boogie 3 times while staring in the mirror. Is it like Candyman? We'll find out. Nate's asking about what's up with being anti-white. Hey man, I'm as racist as anyone else. I hate liberal white people. Just kidding. Where am I? And then they give me one ETH for paying my bills. So you can actually go literally look into some of the Gemini stuff, like Gemini AI, and like they're making shit like it makes George Washington black. It's just white, well, not whitewashing, inverse color washing everything. I see Nelly's thinking that I got jokes for days. If you know, you know. All right, let me hop back over to a few more articles, and then what will end up happening is I'll leave us on a little bit of a high note, so people will tune in a few hours and catch my follow-up stream with Boogie and Jay on this stuff. So let me reshare my screen, pull up a different set of content. All right, so we chatted a little bit about AI. About a year ago, I was actually looking to make some speculative AI plays based on just the hype surrounding ChatGPT back then. And there's some different ways you can potentially look at this. And my current framework here or thought process is, and if somebody's got something different, feel free to comment in chat, leave me a comment, hit me up on Telegram or Twitter. Fundamental analysis will tell you the what surrounding the narrative, the hype, the emotion, and technical analysis will give you more insights into when. So you've got the what's wise timing. I use on-chain as kind of a predictive tool for bridging the gap. I might look at things like wallet creation, transaction volume, stuff like that. Anyway, hypothetically, let's say I want to go fishing today for an AI token. What might I do? Well, I might take a look at something for convenience sake because I am a working professional. I have a property to maintain. You've certainly seen I've got a boatload of guitars, and some of you have seen my dog running around. So I got other responsibilities too. If I could be full-time crypto, when I am full-time crypto, soon, I look forward to having a different set of problems. But anyway, I might poke around and start looking for some stuff like, hey, show me something that's kind of filtered down. So I might hop over to CoinGecko and take a look for some AI tokens and kind of see what's going on. And I had this pulled open earlier. I just want to refresh it and see what's up. All right. So according to this, there's roughly approaching 17 and a half, still shy of that market cap, as far as 17.5 bill market cap on total AI tokens. And I might start poking around here and going, okay, what do we got? Like, what's killing it? I'm not necessarily going to look at like a 1 hour volume or 24-hour volume. That's a little too soon, too degenerate for me on that front. But I might poke around and flip around 7 days. All right, deepfake AI. 214,000 volume, 5.6 market cap. It's probably new. Crazy up and to the right chart. Rank 1589. I would have some very significant questions before I touch that one. But it's up 764%. Okay. What I'm going to quickly do is skim through and look at the 7-day movement versus the 24-hour movement versus the market cap, just to, again, get a quick status check, kind of see which way the wind's blowing on some of this stuff. Skimming through, okay, Delicium, interesting, 152 mil, rank 334. I might have questions, might fly by night or not. Again, I would just kind of start looking through. And I'm also cross-checking this in my brain, like, hey, have I seen certain things on Twitter about this? Or are there people in my community or in some of the communities I travel through that I trust to do a certain level of due diligence? And look, ain't none of us perfect. Nobody gets 100% of the calls right. But have I conversed and interacted with these people? Do I have some insight into how they think? And I'm kind of, thinking about all these different things. One thing I am very careful about is, especially where I like to spend a decent amount of time on crypto Twitter on my phone, just like looking for ideas and seeing what some of my contacts and the like are posting. I am aware that potentially the algorithm is cultivating certain things for me. And my concern here is going to be a bad cultivation in the sense like, oh, Twinkie, you're super interested in AI tokens. This is the AI token that all the influencers are peddling. So it's getting 11 billion mentions. We're going to tell you about it. Well, is it legit or is it just some bullshit that's jumping to the top of my feed because of the algorithm? Anyway, I'll be flipping through this and okay, 70+% here, some interesting things. In the spirit of full disclosure, I did invest in Singularity Net AGIX a little over a year ago. I can tell you I wish I had done more in the grand scheme of things. But okay, interesting. It's up 74%. In this particular case, I know a fair bit about this token. All right, that's on CoinGecko. I would probably hop over to CoinMarketCap for I'm looking for a level of confirmation here. I'm kind of wondering to what extent do the two align? They should be fairly similar based upon price calculation and supply. One of the things I like about CoinMarketCap, even though they're not our best friends in the grand scheme of things, because they gatekeep certain things, but one of the things I do like is if you look at circulating supply, you can see they've got this nice little bar graph effectively running underneath the total token supply, which to me is potentially useful to see, hey, how many tokens are actually in supply? So in this particular case, I told you I invested in AGIX a year ago. It's showing around 1.2 billion tokens in supply. I would take a quick look at that and go, okay, circulating supply at 62.83%. That might be a little bit of a red flag for me. So in this particular case, I did invest in them. Why? I can tell you, very simplified. It's a lot like for those of us in the Hex community, you think about the total supply versus what the OA holds. It's actually a pretty similar case with the AGIX side of things. It's not quite the same, but I'll say it's similar in the sense that you can't just rely on circulating supply at a glance. So in this particular case, as I was doing a bunch of AI-related research on assorted tokens about a year ago, I would have basically come to the wrong conclusion if I looked at the circulating supply and say, hey, it's below my threshold where I feel comfortable. Something about it ultimately caused me to keep looking at it, and I elected to put some money in there. I'll speak more about that a little later tonight when we've got Boogie and Jay on the stream. But the takeaway message for this afternoon is just because the circulating supply shows low doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad pick and or that there is a tremendous amount of inflationary pressure waiting in the wings. It's a similar case to what potentially the OA is doing in the sense that, okay, yeah, it's a circulating supply. There's this total available supply left. The real question is, what does the unlock or dump schedule look like for these tokens? So that's what I got for now for Singularity Net. We got a whole bunch more coming up on them and some charts and the like at 7 p.m. Eastern with Jay and Boogie. So that's about 3 hours away from now. And I appreciate everyone tuning in. We can tune in for a further conversation with some of those TA wizards and like. We'll have the opportunity to chat and get to know Boogie and Jay a little bit better. I appreciate everyone tuning in this afternoon and more to come. So I'll see y'all in a few hours. Peace.